Yeah, quick update before we move on to our next segment. I did just hear from Jeremy Loffredo, the Grayzone contributor who is being persecuted in Israel for his journalism, who was jailed. He was just called in today for an interrogation by Israeli police. It lasted 6 hours. He is now out again. I don't know any details of the interrogation, what took place. I'm hoping this is part of a process that is moving towards a resolution where he can go home. But once I have more details, then I'll report them. But they're continuing to investigate and persecute him.
The timing of all this too, it comes right after another Grayzone reporter, Liam Cosgrove, went viral for, questioning Matthew Miller at the State Department and just expressing his frustration at all the lies and spin that Miller puts out every single day. And Liam, said what all of us think, at least anybody who likes the Grayzone, which is that we're just tired of all the lies and during a genocide, and a really viral clip.
Well, I think Liam Cosgrove spoke for many of the people in the briefing room who just don't have the freedom to say what he said.
Yeah.
So we should watch that, because this was a cathartic moment for so many people who've been watching these briefings where Smirkula, aka Matthew Miller, just gets up there and lies and lies and lies about what we're seeing before our eyes, about the genocide we've been witnessing, and continues to condemn Russia's bombing of schools with so much indignation, and declaring Iran to be a terrorist state that must be countered and can't be negotiated with, and comes as close as possible to advancing Blinken's agenda, which was to target Moscow with long-range strikes. So Liam really laid it out. And I should say, right before when he sent me this clip, he said, looks like my last day in the briefing room. Check it out. And I had no idea what to expect. And when I watched it, I was deeply moved. And this does help set the backdrop for what's happening with Jeremy, which we'll explain in a second. But watch this if you haven't yet.
Go ahead. So Israel is still poised to strike Iran. And in July, Blinken said that Iran was 1 to 2 weeks away from developing a nuclear weapon. So I guess for all we know, they might have one by now. And meanwhile, in Ukraine, they've struck deep within Russian territory several times, as deep as 300 miles from the border. And in that case, we don't have to guess. We know that Russia has the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet, as many as 6,000 warheads. And so one of the risks of arming militaries that are striking in the territories of nuclear powers is that one of those gets deployed, and then it could escalate very quickly from there. So it's rarely discussed, but it's important to address that the nuclear risk is real, and it could very abruptly mean the end of what humans have worked for thousands of years to collectively achieve. And us today are very lucky to live with the fruits of that achievement, and I feel like we're treating the risks kind of brazenly. So my question for you is, we often hear in response to these concerns that, well, Putin, Khomeini, they're war criminals, they're terrorists, as if they're too inherently evil or immoral for us to negotiate with. But meanwhile, this administration has financed a genocide in Gaza for the last year, and every day you're up there denying accountability for it. So, I mean, what gives you the right to lecture other countries on their moral?
So if you have a policy question for me, I'm happy to take it. If you want to give a speech,
no, but
there are plenty of places in Washington where you can give a speech.
Yeah, but people are sick of the bullshit in here. I mean, like, it is a genocide. You are abetting it, and you are risking nuclear war in Ukraine for this proxy war.
Plenty of other places to give a speech. Go ahead.
Thank you, Matt.
I love how the journalist just moved on. But yeah, that's what everyone wanted to say in there. Not everyone. There's a lot of tools in there, but some people in there. And, I remember the first time I went in there and challenged Miller, a reporter walked up to me afterwards and said, "What's your name?" And I said, and they just said, "Thank you. Thank you." It's like they can't do it because they're from a mainstream publication. And he's just such an odious character. I mean, it's his job, but you would think at a certain point the job would become too much. So Liam spoke for so many. That clip went viral. And here's that piece, Aaron, I was mentioning to you in The Guardian by the Freedom of the Press Foundation, Seth Stern, which calls for Jeremy's release, is putting pressure on the State Department to call for his release and spells out the double standard between him and like Evan Gerskovich. But there's this passage here that is so annoying, but so typical and so predictable. And I'm still glad that they did this. You know, I don't want to hit him too hard, but it says it complicates matters that Loffredo reports for the Grayzone, an outlet that has been accused of carrying Russian and Chinese propaganda. Okay, we've been accused, so that just, you know,
Hey,
makes it legitimate.
If you're going to be involved in like freedom of the press, right? That's his group. Shouldn't you adhere to like minimal standards of how the press works? So yes, someone has accused us of that, like, you know, but doesn't mean it's worthy enough to mention unless there's something behind it. Can you substantiate that view? That view? It's the most like lazy smear possible. Someone accused us of something, so therefore let's just repeat it.
Yeah,
Because I'm so afraid to just defend Jeremy Loffredo on the merits, and I have to throw in deference to the narrative about the Grayzone that appears often in outlets like The Guardian, which constantly get things wrong and hate us because we don't get things wrong and we do our jobs as journalists. Like, it's just so lazy and so cowardly too. You're supposed to be freedom of the press. So
yeah.
why do you stand up for the press? And why do you feel the need to like repeat this lazy smear of us that everybody does with no substantiation whatsoever? Someone, okay, great. Like, I don't know. I'm sure someone's accused this author of something. Should I throw that in every time I talk about him? Like, when I thank him for defending Jeremy, should I say he's also been accused of, I don't know, being a jerk to his like relative, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? It's just it's so lazy. So lazy.
I've been accused of a lot of things, and I was accused of beating an old 54-year-old woman.
Right. Yeah.
I was also accused of beating the same woman who was said to be pregnant. I don't know. Maybe
Well, explain this.
Sarah
And this
Palin.
is when you were delivering food to the people in the Venezuelan embassy.
Yeah, well, I was accused of that.
You
So
were
he is
accused
accused of beating up a 50-something woman and slamming her into a wall and like leaving her with a broken leg. It turned out it just wasn't true, but I was jailed. So, you know, these are accusations. The next line is even worse. It says, the administration is embroiled in a separate and constitutionally dubious fight against alleged propagandists. This is referring to the indictment by the U.S. Department of Justice of Tenet Media, which took millions of dollars from RT, kind of, I don't know, under the table, and then paid like right-wing influencers to just do these videos nobody watched for a ton of money.
Yeah.
So I don't know why that has anything to do with us. And we didn't do that. We didn't do anything like that. So are we propagandists? How does one line follow the other? Then Freedom of the Press Foundation refers to Liam's exchange with Matthew Miller. The day of Loffredo's arrest, another Grayzone reporter had a heated exchange with the State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller, accusing the U.S. of recklessly risking nuclear war. So this, according to the Freedom of the Press Foundation, complicates matters. Why does it complicate matters? Like, the State Department shouldn't care what our politics are. We should expect them to act without political prejudice and just to care that Jeremy Loffredo is an American citizen who is being persecuted and held against his will by another country. But in any case, they drew the connection there.
So
and I thank them for this statement, which says the case requires the immediate attention of American officials. It should actually say that he should be released. I wonder if the Guardian actually made them put in that kind of hippie punching paragraph. Like, that's the editor. Who's the editor there?
Kat Viner.
Kat Viner, yeah. What a crappy magazine. Like, it's really just like the Kamala campaign with a British accent. It's like neoconservatism with woke, like rainbow politics, and you know, MI6 deceptions.
I mean, The Guardian is the same outlet that accused me of being part of a network of conspiracy theorists who is the most prolific spreader of disinformation on Syria. And they did that by citing a State Department funded study that didn't provide a single example of my alleged disinformation on Syria, and didn't even point out one false statement I've ever made, because there are none that they can point to, because it's just a smear, which this guy is happy to cater to. And I guess that's, to write about the Grayzone and the Guardian, I guess that's a price you have to pay. You have to spread propaganda about us to be able to defend our rights as journalists. I think that's the trade-off, I guess.